That's right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Government Oversight on Daylight Savings Time, and we're experiencing the wonders of it. But Senator Hatchett, if you will, open us in a word of prayer, and we'll get started, okay? Let's see, you are number 14. Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for waking us up this morning. Thank you for all that you've given us. Please continue to guide us and let us do your will under this gold dome. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Let's see. The first one early this morning is Representative, we're going to deal with HB 161, Representative Tankersley. And if you will, you want to work from there or you want to work from the podium?
Whichever you prefer.
We'll put you at the podium if that's okay.
That is correct.
Thank you. You look like a podium person.
I am. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to stand before you today and present House Bill 161. We're operating off of LC 470735. And this is a Department of Community Affairs bill that I'm really pleased to present. It's relevant only to downtown development authorities. This bill did pass out of the House last year, 173-0, but then it was sent over to the Senate, and due to COVID, it was laid to rest until this year. So we picked it back up. Just a little background. In Georgia, we've got over 1,000 downtown development authorities. And, you know, they include things like housing, airport, water, sewer, et cetera. Among these, we have 231 downtown development authorities that were established by municipal governments, with 39 DDAs being listed as inactive. While these downtown development authorities can go inactive, they cannot be dissolved, and that's because of 6 words in this bill. You'll see it underlined on your copy, and it says that downtown development authorities, gosh, I lost my place, but anyway, they must remain in perpetual existence. Okay, we got it now.
Line 15.
Yeah, line 15, downtown development authorities are the only authorities that require perpetual existence. And even though they are inactive, they're still required to generate an annual financial report. So it's just a little extra work that's not necessary. But this bill would certainly allow local governments, municipalities to dissolve these downtown development authorities. And that is if they are no longer active, hold no assets, and have no outstanding debt or other obligations. And this, so I've already told you that that's all we have to do is remove those 6 words, and it allows them to be dissolved. The Georgia Municipal Association supports this bill, and I'm asking for your favorable consideration. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Okay, Ronald Reagan would like this because he said that the nearest thing to eternal life was a government law or bill. So
and this one may be it. I don't know why this particular authority, but it was to exist perpetually.
Very good. Questions? Any questions?
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion for my good friend.
Thank you.
I'm looking for your number. I think you're 5, but is that
The one in your heart, I might be number 5.
You're 6. Okay,
6.
Go for it, sir.
Move to pass, Mr. Chairman.
Move to do pass. Okay, we have a second. Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Okay. All in favor? Raise hands. All opposed?
Oh, sorry. Sorry I didn't raise my hand.
Okay.
I'm in favor.
You're in favor. Okay. Unanimous, I think, on that one. You can do. Okay. Very. Second, Senator C. Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Taxi. Appreciate it. Okay. Got that one done. Okay, there. Next on our agenda, Representative Gramble. Is he here? HB 92. Let's see if he's there. Okay, we'll go to the next one. HR 130, Representative McDonald. All right. He's here.
You're late.
Well, I was outside, they wouldn't let me in.
They wouldn't let you in. You didn't pay admission. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was on standard time to Representative.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, and Representative Tanksley talked about laying something to rest. That kind of woke me up and fast forwarded me to daylight savings, so I'm here and ready.
All right.
So, this is House Resolution 130 LC 441725S.
Okay, there is an S or substitute in file
Yes, sir.
folders.
Everyone should have a copy of it. This is a ratification done back in November of a vote. The DCA voted to move Forsyth County from the Georgia Mountain Region to the ARC. And then it went to our Board of Commissioners of Forsyth County with a 5-0 vote. And that's why I'm here to present this to y'all today. The substitute, basically what it is in it is once this is passed, July 1st, goes into effect, you have 90 days to call an election of 87 House members and 27 senators to do an election, which the person would take office in 2022 for the certain district. This moves it to 180 days, so our census will be done by then, and just makes business sense.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Very, very good. Any questions? Questions? Yes, Kim. Yes, Senator.
At the appropriate time, make a motion.
Make a motion. Okay, we have a motion. Have a second?
I'll second.
Got it.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Dolezal, and a question.
To my good friend from Forsyth County, can you, I know the 180 days, we talked about this before, but I'm just looking at line 38, and it says 90 days following the release of the 2020 census. So is that 90 days correct, or does that need to be amended to be 180?
It's line 35.
38.
I do.
What line are you talking about, Senator?
Line 38,
38?
you referenced the 180 days, this says 90 on mine. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong.
No. Mine on the substitute, you're right, correct.
Go to line 42, 43. It says, in response to transfer complete in the conjunction of redistricting required in the substitution. Tyler, can I ask Chairman Tyler with DCA to?
Ask him to come on.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Or we'll get him, hold on, we got number 7. Okay, Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tyler Reinagel. I'm the Director of the Office of Planning and Research at the Department of Community Affairs. That 90-day statement is actually correct. Current statute has 2 trigger points for the redistricting of the ARC citizen districts. One of those being a 90-day window after the addition of a member, which this would be for Forsyth County and the City of Cumming, and then another 90-day window following the release of the census data. So what this will do is coincide those so that the ARC redistricting based on the Forsyth County membership will extend to 180 days, so an additional 90 days beyond the 90 already in statute.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So that'll take that roughly to the end of the calendar year.
Okay, thank you for clarification on that, very good. All right, any other questions? No questions? Thank you, sir. What's the pleasure of the committee? Oops, I'm sorry. Okay, second, we had a second. Are you my second, Rand? Motion? Dolezal second. Okay, and he asked a question. Okay, we're good. All right. All in favor, if you'll raise your hand. Okay, all opposed? And you're
Thank you, Mr.
underway,
Chairman.
sir. Thank you.
Committee. Thank you.
All right. Coming back to Representative Gamble, did he leave us? No, he's with us. All right, starting with HB 92.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's good to be with you today. And I have House Bill 92 here in front of you, and just basically want to say that I had a very good friend of mine who is very involved in genealogy come to me last year, actually, and said, Matthew, there's been a change in the law that has really affected our ability to do research and to have access to these records. And he said, I want you to help us try to do something to address it. And basically what had happened was last year in a code cleanup bill, we changed the specified number of years for vital records transfer over to the state archives for to 125 years for birth certificates and to 100 years for death certificates. And in that created a situation that probably was even further exacerbated by COVID, where folks that do repatriation, bringing the remains of soldiers back to the country, they're looking for next of kin. Anyone that's involved in research through genealogy is having a very difficult time gaining access to these records. It's become cumbersome and expensive. And Dr. Elizabeth Olsen and Elizabeth Moy and Kurt Canaday are here today, and I don't know that we allow testimony, but they have been with me for the whole process of this, moving through the House and coming over here today. But in this bill, we would basically revert back to how the law had previously been specified, which is 100 years for birth certificates and 75 years for marriage or death certificates. And so that, in essence, is what the bill does, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And if you want to do a little bit deeper dive into how this is actually impacting our constituents on the ground, they can speak to firsthand experience of that. But I know this is a concern. You may have heard from some of your constituents about this by now, and I just appreciate your consideration of this legislation.
Would you like for them to speak? They're here, I assume.
Yes, sir. Miss Olsen
Olsen?
is.
Okay, if she'd like to speak on behalf of it, if you'd want to come forward, and if you give me your name and your position and where you're from, and once you're up here.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Olsen. I am a professional genealogist. I'm from Suwanee. I'm also the president of the Georgia chapter of the Association of Professional Genealogists, and I'm a member of the board of directors of the Gwinnett Historical Society. And I think what we have here is well-intended legislation that had unintended consequences. The reasoning for closing these records was to protect extreme age citizens from identity theft. But in Georgia, we didn't register births or deaths until 1919. So last year would have been the first year that these records would have been open. And they weren't open, they weren't transferred, they weren't open. So any argument for identity theft is based on hypothetical possibilities. We've had access to 25 years of death certificates in the past that closed as a result of this, and to do in-depth research, we need access to that. And I've worked, I do military repatriation cases where when remains are found from soldiers lost in past wars, my job is to find the surviving next of kin. And I have to use records like these to find those people. Also, I've worked on a number of very large projects where we're trying to identify the descendants of formerly enslaved people for some of the larger plantations that were here in Georgia. And these are the records that we deep dive into. For one project, I looked at between 300 and 500 death certificates. You can't do that if these records are not open and available where you can access them in a database. The way it is now, we have very restrictive access requirements in Georgia now for someone to get a closed record. If you meet that requirement, then you would have to pay a minimum of $25 or an average of $33 to order it online, and that's cost prohibitive for any of these historical projects. So it doesn't just affect genealogists or family historians. This affects anybody that does historical research, authors, scholars, academics, medical researchers, and many more. If we were allowed access, it would still be cost prohibitive for us to access that many records at a cost per document. So any denial of access stops historical research that we've been doing, and it's very important research.
Okay.
Thank you for
Very good.
letting me
Thank you.
speak today.
Thank you. Did you have another witness or someone else?
Miss Olsen, I don't think anyone else is
Did you
going
want
to
to-
speak, but they did come today just for the hearing. Oh, okay.
Sure.
Mr. Canaday.
Okay, come on forward and give us your name, who you're with, where you're from, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. My name is Kirk Kennedy. I'm with Johns Creek Historical Society. And for the last 2 years, I've been heavily involved in the restoration of Macedonia Cemetery there in Johns Creek. And I got initially involved with the cemetery project and discovered there were headstones that were stolen out of the cemetery. And I spent the last 2 years trying to recover. I recovered one and had that brought back to the cemetery and reinstalled. The cemetery has been heavily vandalized. The church that stood on those grounds was the second church, was vandalized and destroyed and had to be removed. And right now, Johns Creek is in the process of doing an eminent domain capture of the property, and we're probably looking toward the end of the year for that to happen. But there's a lot of things that have to happen in that place to stabilize the cemetery and to convert that to a memorial garden. That's my dream project. It's been that way for the last couple of years, and we'll get a lot of support from some of the local Convention Visitors Bureau and a couple of other organizations in Johns Creek. And we still have another slave person there buried in the cemetery, and we want to do the research on that family. A gentleman by the name of Reuben Chandler. And he was a slave on George Morgan Waters' plantation. April Waters, there was a big discovery. Everybody thought it was a woman, and they kind of want to romanticize that. Oh, here's a slave woman, but it turns out April Waters is a man. And there's a lot of history still to be uncovered there. A lot of broken headstones buried under pine, straw, and leaves that we have to do some recovery on. And we need to do the research. We have some documents of people that are buried there. There are no headstones unless we can find them in the cemetery. But I appreciate the support you can give me on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Question, excuse me. Yes, sir.
I'm slow here. I apologize. It's early. So you're speaking against the bill?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I clarify that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The last thing you should say when you speak is either you're for it or against it.
Oh.
You for it or are you against it?
I want to get back to where it was before. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
If
All right.
that's-
Okay.
You know, this is my first time in front of a group like this. You guys got to bear
Well, I
with me.
couldn't figure what either one of y'all wanted.
We were trying to figure out, y'all were friends, okay. Senator Robertson. Yes, sir.
Question for the rep, but first, Mr. Chairman, I want to clarify, we are working off LC 338488, is that correct?
LC
Yes.
338488.
Okay. So, when I first read this, Representative, I was a little in the water, not quite understanding what we were talking about until I was lobbied for the first time. I don't know if anybody else has ever been, by the Records Preservation and Access Coalition, who sent a very detailed letter out and helped me understand it.
Yeah.
So in listening to the testimony, I do appreciate the repatriation projects and the cemetery and slavery projects that are being done. I do believe that's important here to the state of Georgia with our history, not only with slavery, but also our history and our history that continues today with our military bases throughout here and the men and women that sacrificed their life, including my great uncle on the soils of foreign lands. So it means a lot to me. But one quick question, line 10, it does not obligate me to be married for 75 years, does it?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
No.
Just want to make sure. Mr. Chair, whenever you're ready, whenever you're ready, I'll make a motion to pass.
Okay, sir. Go ahead with your motion.
Motion do pass, Mr.
Pass.
Chair.
Second. Oops, excuse me, I'm sorry. we're going to go discussion, but we do have someone in opposition that we missed, and I want to, I'm sorry, I didn't realize there. Come on forward, give us your name, and we'll hear you, and we're working through that. Let's see. If you'll give us your name and
Yes.
where you're from.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Andrews. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Georgia Department of Public Health. You have before you House Bill 92, which requires the Department of Public Health to transfer birth certificates to state archives 100 years after a person's date of birth and 75 years after a person's date of death. This bill reverses a change that the General Assembly passed during the 2019 legislative session in Senate Bill 372, which was a department bill. That change passed unanimously on the Senate floor. We have concerns, particularly on the change to the length of time birth certificates are held by DPH for several reasons. First, this bill would allow birth certificates for Georgians who are over 100 years old to be accessible by the general public. There are Georgians that are over 100 years old that are still alive, and their records would then be open and available to anyone to walk in and get a copy of. This population is particularly vulnerable to fraud and identity theft, and they deserve at least the same protections to their personal identity documents as Georgia residents that are under the age of 100. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is the National Association for Public Health Statistics and Information Systems, NAPSIS. It's a national nonprofit organization that has represented state vital records offices and public health statistic offices in the U.S. since 1933. They adopted model state vital statistics laws that are recommended best practices for states to follow. This model law calls for records to be held by vital records for 125 years after a date of birth and 75 years after a date of death. I have copies of the model law if any members of the committee would like it. The change to the retention of the birth certificates would bring Georgia out of compliance with this nationwide best practice. I am willing to compromise on the death certificate language and have relayed that to the bill sponsor. And the projects that the other testifiers spoke about, they're all speaking about individuals that are deceased. So death certificate data should be sufficient for them to meet their research needs. My specific concern is the birth certificates for Georgians that are still alive being accessible to the general public. I'm happy to take questions at this time. I also have our state registrar who runs our vital records office outside if you have specific questions. Yes.
I'll wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want to speak?
Please. Yes, sir.
Yes, Senator Robinson.
Now, so are you telling me that because as years as a single dad with two children, I had on several occasions had to go get copies of my sons and daughters' birth certificates. Are you telling me that anybody can walk in to any of the offices and get my birth certificate or any other birth certificate here?
No. Right now, Vital Records only allows birth certificates to be released to very specific people. They have to be next of kin and show that in order to get a copy of a birth certificate.
So explain to me how somebody could go in and get the birth certificate of a living 102-year-old if y'all are concerned about identity theft of a living person whose privacy, I agree with you, needs to be protected.
Mm-hmm. So right now, under current law, it would be the same process as anyone under 100. They would come to a Vital Records office, prove their next of kin or that they're a person that should get a copy of this birth certificate. If this bill passes, if someone is 102 and you want to get their birth certificate, you could go to state archives and you don't need to show any supporting documentation and you can just get a copy of that person's birth certificate.
Okay.
It's open to the general public.
Yeah, anyone in the general public can get it.
Yeah, so would the person have to go there specifically with a name, or do they just go in and look according to date of birth and try to find somebody that falls within that category? And
They could probably do either. The researchers can probably answer that better.
And do you know approximately what percentage of Georgia's population would fall into that category?
Of over 100?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if our state registrar knows. He oversees all the birth and death certificates in the state, so let me grab him. Hold on.
Okay.
Just a second.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris Harrison, our state registrar.
Good morning.
He doesn't know specifically the number of Georgians that are over 100.
Thank you. Just a sec. We'll get you. You know the answer?
I know that in 2010, the Census Bureau reported that we had 1,142 Georgians over the age of 100. It's an old statistic, but it's the only one available.
Thank you, I appreciate
Very
it.
small percentage of the population.
Okay.
I guess y'all should have the class reunions then.
Okay.
We're having a class reunion next
Senator C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As one of the Georgians who had one of the oldest residents of 114 in my district in Riverdale, I want to know how many in that category has had identity theft.
Well, we haven't, right, their records haven't been released yet. So last year was supposed to be the first year that we were transferring birth certificates to state archives. When we were working with state archives on this project, we came across this issue that there's still Georgians alive, right? We're the holder of the records as the State Vital Records Office, and we have a duty to protect the identity of the records that we hold. So we had this discussion with state archives and came to the decision to pursue an agency bill last year that passed unanimously to protect these records for that population. So they haven't been transferred to state archives yet, right? So we don't know if there would be identity theft. What I'm just trying to say is that this population is particularly vulnerable, and they do deserve at least the same protections as someone who's under 100 years old to their personal identification documents.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
So
go
is
ahead.
it your testimony then, what's currently on the books
Current law.
is what you want to keep?
As far as the birth certificates, I am willing to negotiate on the death certificates because we don't have that same concern with personal identity theft when someone is deceased.
Okay.
Senator Miller.
Mr. Chairman, based on the feedback we're hearing, would it be advisable that we could ask the author of the bill and the agencies to work to get this a little more where everybody's comfortable with it? I'm not sure this is quite ready for prime time, and it appears. And we have a meeting, unfortunately, we have a meeting tomorrow morning with only one item on the docket. So
Jesus.
it wouldn't be the, yeah, I know. So it wouldn't be the end of the world if we,
Yeah, if we had to do.
if we had to wait till tomorrow morning. Unless you want to move tomorrow morning's bill to here, then we vote and get rid of both of them. No.
Senator Robertson.
Whatever's required, I have no concerns with withdrawing my motion. And of course, a quick question, I don't know why we would ever transfer a living individual's birth certificate to any archive to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think the age is not as much of a concern of mine as why we leave open the opportunity for somebody who's alive with a heartbeat, why their birth certificate will be archived to begin with, is a concern I have.
Or access.
So, right.
The author's going to speak.
Okay. The author, okay, Senator Gamble. Representative Gamble.
No, and I appreciate that, and I did discuss that compromise with the Governmental Affairs Committee in the House, because obviously, look, I respect our state agencies. My dad is a retired state employee, and I appreciate the excellent work that they do. The committee didn't want to do that. They felt like this was important enough to move it forward in the way it had been authored. And Ms. Olsen wanted to clarify something from just a minute ago. If you'd come forward, Ms. Olsen, just to speak very briefly.
Come right up.
I'll be quick. The reason we haven't used the birth certificates in research is because they haven't been accessible. Georgia didn't record births or deaths until 1919. There are no birth certificates for 102-year-old people in Georgia unless they're delayed certificates, and those are filed in the year that the delay was,
Took place.
the birth certificate was obtained. Ms. Andrews mentioned NAPSIS. NAPSIS, at a conference last year, the Federation of Genealogical Societies conference, spoke and told us they're rewriting that Model Vital Records Act with an emphasis on more open records. Further, the Georgia Department of Public Health is required by code that when they get a death certificate, they're supposed to stamp a birth certificate that the person is deceased. It would seem to me that that would alleviate any sort of problem, and a regulation can be made where these birth certificates that aren't stamped aren't transferred until they do. But there's no evidence of identity theft. A 2019 Supreme Court case in New York, the judge found in favor of the people that wanted the open records because all of the evidence of identity theft in these records was based on hypothetical possibilities. The identity theft comes from large government databases being hacked and the information being sold on the dark web. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Gamble, are you open to the changes and working on that?
I would be. I just want to make sure in the changes that it helps the constituents that we have that are trying to gain access to these records. That's the main thing. We can change it if that's what it takes to move the bill forward, but if at the end of the day our people are still not having the ability to gain access to these records and the problem's not solved, then I don't want to waste anybody's time. So, and Ms. Olsen, am I correct that leaving the death certificate specification where it is at would still create the dilemma that we have at stake? So I just want to make sure that that's...
People have to pay for these documents if they're closed. That's the biggest issue for historical research.
Okay.
And then I still, Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Roberts?
Yeah, I'm still have asked to move my motion.
Withdraw.
Withdraw my
Withdraw.
motion.
Okay.
Withdraw my motion. And while I appreciate that, and I appreciate your concerns, and I appreciate that, I think not to be cold, but I'm not worried about anybody having to pay for records as much as I want to make sure that we have a rule or regulation that protects the rights of those that are living, and I trust Representative Gamble to get it right. And I appreciate the fact that the committee over in the House realized that if they wanted an intelligent body to make a decision on this, that had to be done on this side of the hallway. So I greatly appreciate their clarity on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Gamble, if you will, would you work on a substitute for us and
Yes,
bring
sir.
that back to us? We all know we're going to live longer than we've ever lived before.
Right.
And we just don't want to be a victim to this as we get that old.
Certainly.
And so if you would
certainly.
work on that and come back to us, we would hear you, okay?
I'd be glad to. And I, again, want to thank y'all for your time today.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you. I appreciate it. Very good. All right, we have Representative Cantrell, which is the talk of the town. This is our first day of daylight savings time, and we're going to hear daylight darkness. Is that what it is? Darkness. All right. Thank you, sir. Enlighten us with. It looked like you did the steps in a quick period of time, correct?
I did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Anybody else feeling a little groggy today? I appreciate the committee hearing this bill this morning. I'm not going to bore you with the evidence about the how badly we need to get rid of time change. You've already heard Dr. Watson, Senator Watson, speak of the effects of time change, and you're personally feeling the effects of time change today. So I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about why we need to switch to daylight saving time permanently. There's lots of good reasons, but the primary reason I think we should switch to daylight saving time permanently is Georgians. Georgians want daylight saving time permanently. When asked about time change, 90% of people hate time change. They want to get rid of it. But then when asked which they would prefer between daylight saving time or standard time, 70% of Georgians choose daylight saving time. So that's the primary reason. But there's also lots of practical reasons why Georgians prefer daylight saving time. More sunlight in the evening. This is good for our health. People prefer to exercise, recreate in the daylight. People want to come home from work, play in the yard with their kids, play around the golf, all these kind of things. They may even want to go shopping. It's good for our economy. People prefer to shop in the daylight. From a safety perspective, there are fewer car accidents in daylight saving time. The majority of car accidents occur between 6 and 9 p.m. when you have the combination of the commute home and people who are out and about for whatever reason. 1 more hour of daylight would help that. Less crime. A lot of juvenile criminals prefer to commit their crimes right after sunset, before it's time to go to bed because they got to go to school the next day, I guess. But 1 more hour of daylight mitigates crime. The studies show that crime goes down during daylight saving time. Energy savings. This was the original purpose of daylight saving time. The evidence is mixed on this, but overall, the evidence shows that there is some energy savings with daylight saving time. It's also good for pollution. It's better for the afternoon commute to take place in the daylight. It mitigates the pollution that comes out for that to happen during the daylight hours. And also helps us in the fight against childhood obesity as people burn more calories, children included, during daylight saving time. And also, we're in daylight saving time currently for 8 months out of the year already. So the easier adjustment, if we're going to go permanently to daylight saving time or standard time, the easier adjustment to go to daylight saving time, because it's only 4 months out of the year that would change, as opposed to the other direction, which would switch us for 8 months out of the year. Now, the one major objection to daylight saving time, and you've probably heard this, permanent daylight saving time, is children standing at the bus stop in the dark. I can tell you that there's a bus stop right in front of my house in Hickory Flat where I live. The elementary kids get on the bus at 6:55 a.m. and it's dark. It's dark now. It's dark last week. So if I've done a lot of research on this, and there is no evidence to show that our children's safety is in any way compromised by getting on the bus in the dark. But if it is, then schools could very easily adjust their bell schedules accordingly if somehow our kids were jeopardized somehow in this. One of the main reasons we should switch to daylight saving time is because Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi is about to make this same choice. When the federal government gives permission to go to daylight saving time permanently, they've already passed this legislation that I'm bringing to you today, and they will move to daylight saving time. And if Georgia does not pass this legislation, we will be the odd man out. We'll be the one in standard time during the winter when every state around us is in daylight saving time. So we need to make this move, and we need to make it now, because there's a lot of movement at the Congress. You may have read last week there was a bipartisan bill introduced in the Senate to take us to daylight saving time, and Georgia needs to be positioned to move when the rest of the Southeast moves. So that's the bill, Mr. Chairman, and I commit to you guys, if you'll pass this bill, the governor signs it, that I'll continue to work with our congressmen. I've already got an appointment with Senator Warnock to discuss this, to see if he's interested in sponsoring legislation like this or signing on to existing legislation. Also, Congressman Bishop, I've spoken with him about this. I think it's rather obvious, since both chambers in D.C. are controlled by the Democrat Party right now, that it might need Democrat sponsorship. And this is a truly bipartisan issue, so there's no reason we can't get together on this and make it happen.
Did you plan to present this on the first day after daylight? Was that your plan?
That was not my plan. I believe that was the chairman's plan.
Okay. I just wanted to see about that.
Last year on this day, a year ago today, I presented a resolution before the House to urge Congress to give us this authority. The timing was good.
Just when the states you mentioned, there's only one state that borders us that has not adopted this. Is that what I understand?
That's correct. Alabama.
Alabama's
and we're already an hour different from them anyway, and they tend to follow our lead. So I think they'll come along very quickly after we do. And I only mentioned states in the Southeast. I think there's 20 states nationwide that have passed similar legislation to this, but just a lot of people are concerned that we would be different from others, and the truth is, if we don't pass this, we'll be different from others.
Okay. Senator Merritt.
Just to your point about schools, I have always thought school started way too early. We could actually push back the time, I would say 1 or 2 hours. No one's brain is up, it's a lot. So that might be something we can address.
I completely agree
later.
with you, Senator.
It's just too early.
In my district, too, the elementary kids go first,
Yeah.
which seems odd to me.
It's just-
that they would be,
Right.
they're the ones that need, the middle school need to sleep the most. Middle school goes last. They're
Right.
standing at the bus stop around 9 a.m. And they don't get home till 4:30ish if they ride the bus. So it's something that definitely needs a fresh look
Right.
at if we're doing it the best way.
I agree.
Other questions, Senator Jackson?
Mr. Chairman, if the time is appropriate, after receiving hundreds of emails on this topic, I would like to make a motion of due pass, and I'd like to go on the record as having made that motion.
We will put you on the record. I had told him that, Representative Cantrell, that we were going to do hearing only, and
Get that memo.
hold on there. Would you also address the differences between your bill and Senator Watson's bill so that we understand those two differences that are there?
Yes, Senator Watson and I, Dr. Watson and I have been conspiring on this for a couple of years, so we're not at odds. We decided before the session to introduce two different bills to try to get the conversation going. So I think my bill's better. Okay?
Can you tell us why?
Because 70% of Georgians want it. I think when the Senate passed its bill, in all due respect, I got lit up because there's a lot of confusion. And I had a lot of Democrats, frankly, vote against my bill in the House when it came to the floor because there was confusion because they were getting so many emails about the Senate bill. And people don't want to go to standard time. They just don't. Now, a few people do. You know, it's at 70-30 is every poll I've seen, it's about 2 to 1, a little more than 2 to 1. So that's the main reasons, because that's what Georgians want and because the other states around us are going there. If we went to standard time, now in fairness to Senator Watson, his bill does take us to daylight saving time if and when Congress approves it. But that could happen quickly. Congress isn't known for getting things done, so it could be in a decade or never. And so the risk we take with Senate Bill 100 is that we'd be stuck in standard time for the foreseeable future, which wouldn't be awful. We'd get rid of time change. I personally would not have a problem with that. I'm just trying to represent Georgians in my bill. I want to get rid of time change. I'll go either direction, doesn't matter to me. But it clearly matters to Georgians. So that's why I bring this bill.
Other questions, Senator Miller?
Could you repeat those states that have not been? Have those states that you mentioned are in favor of it, have they had this bill and have they had a binding referendum? I mean, you're saying that we'll be the only people left back. You know, everybody rushes up to a cliff and somebody stops and everybody else runs over. I mean, so where are we on the binding referendum? And is there a binding?
There is no binding referendum.
Has there been a binding referendum in these other states?
No, sir.
So there's a 70% straw poll.
Correct.
And where did that straw poll come from?
It came from, I've just looked, there's a ton of them. There's a lot of polls. I can't.
But there's never been on a ballot. There's never been a straw poll.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And that was my original plan, Senator, was to have it on the ballot last year.
And my next question was, those states that you said that surround us that are in favor of this, would you repeat those again?
Yes, Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana. Mississippi's about to pass this. The only state that's not, I don't know that they're even looking at this bill currently is Alabama. And there's about 15 others around the country, but those are the ones from our region.
So as you travel up the northern seaboard, what would be the effect on the time zone?
Well, I wish I had that data in front of you to tell you which ones on the eastern shore have done this similar thing, but I think you'll see everybody go in the same direction, because as bad as it is in Georgia, New York is much further east than we are. Their sun sets at like 4:15, 4:30 in standard time during the winter.
Right.
So I think you'll see everybody join on as it happens.
Okay. I'm glad this is hearing only. Thank you.
Sounded to me like the chairman might be changing his mind about that, though. I don't know.
One other question, it would be this. In these other states, was this done by ballot or was this done by legislature?
By legislature.
By legislature. Okay, I'm just curious about that.
None of them have been enacted. Am I clear on that? Am I clear on that? None of them have been enacted.
No, they've all been, they've been, it's a trigger bill. They've been enacted,
They've been
waiting on
oh,
Congress.
these have been enacted?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes,
so
sir.
That's why I was asking about the straw poll. It's only a straw poll. But
Yeah,
it's
but only a
been-
straw poll, but legislatively, Florida,
Legislatively,
South
all of them
Carolina,
have done.
Tennessee, all the
Okay.
ones I named,
Thank you. That
except
clears that
Mississippi.
up.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
Okay, so clearing it, it requires a trigger at the federal level for any of this stuff to come into play.
That's correct.
Okay.
But the new chairman in the Senate on the new chairman, I forget which committee it is, it's similar to this committee on the federal level, is from Washington State. The prior chairman was from a different state, and he would not even hear the bill. The new chairman's from Washington. Washington already has passed this legislation. So there's a greater likelihood that we're going to see some momentum at the federal level to get this done.
And if this was passed at the federal level and we are currently where we are, we would do what we're doing now.
Until we enact this legislation.
Some type of legislation.
Correct. Either in the Senate bill would work in that case, because it would trigger, it is a trigger bill as well, but it holds us in standard time until the trigger happens.
Okay, okay. And that's the issue between you and Dr. Watson.
That's correct.
Okay, okay, very good, okay. And we've done that. That should open your minds up. You've experienced daylight savings time for the first time today and heard the pros and cons. Okay, thank you, Representative
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Cantrell, and we will work on that and work from that. Okay. With that, that's the last one we've got. No more speaking for or against, and we are dismissed. Thank you very much.